All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain and decode the incredible science behind every single move you make. I mean, from lifting your coffee in the morning to hitting a new PR in the gym, it all starts with the exact same fundamental blueprint. And we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of the amazing biological machine that you're in control of every single day.
So, to really wrap our heads around all this, we're going to follow the entire journey of just one action, a simple bicep curl. You'll see how a simple thought, I'm going to lift this weight, kicks off this complex, fascinating cascade of events in your body. By the end of this, you're going to understand that entire process, from start to finish.
Here's the game plan. We'll start with that initial signal, the spark. Then we'll follow it to the muscle itself, the engine. We're going to uncover the secret of how it actually contracts, explore the different ways it can work, and finally, see how the whole system connects to our skeleton to create real movement.
Okay, first things first, the spark. Before any weight is lifted, before any muscle even thinks about flexing, the command has to be given. And that command, it all starts in your nervous system, the body's ultimate command and control center. It helps to think of your nervous system in two main parts. You've got the central nervous system, or CNS. That's the mainframe, your brain and spinal cord. It's where the decision to, lift that dumbbell is actually made. Then you have the peripheral nervous system, the PNS, and that's all the wiring that carries the command from the mainframe out to every other part of your body. Now, your brain is incredibly precise. It doesn't just shout a general command at your entire bicep. No way. Instead, it sends a very targeted signal down a single nerve cell. We call that a motor neuron, which then connects to a very specific group of muscle fibers. This little team, the one neuron and all the fibers it controls, that's what we call a motor unit.
And this brings us to the critical handoff, the neuromuscular junction. This is the physical point of contact, a tiny gap where that electrical nerve signal arrives and tells the muscle fiber, hey, it's go time. This is literally the moment the spark ignites the engine.
So the signal has arrived. Now let's take a look at the engine it's about to start. We're going to do a deep dive here, basically zooming in on a skeletal muscle and peeling it back layer by layer to see exactly how it's built.
Okay, starting from the outside and working our way in, the entire muscle is wrapped in this tough, protective sheath called the epimysium. You can think of it kind of like a sausage casing. It just holds everything together and keeps that muscle separate from all the other tissues around it.
Go one layer deeper, and we find the perimysium. This is the tissue that bundles individual muscle fibers into groups, which are called fascicles. And you've probably seen these before. If you've ever noticed the grain in a cut of meat, yep, you are looking at fascicle. And finally, we get to the most delicate layer of all, the endomysium. This superfine tissue wraps around every single individual muscle fiber. It kind of acts like an electrical insulator for each cell, which makes sure that the signal to contract is perfectly controlled. But wait, we can go even deeper. Inside each of those muscle fibers are thousands of these tiny little protein strands called myofibrils. Now these are the real engines. They're made of two key proteins, a thin one called actin and a thick one called myosin. It's how these two interact that generates all force and all movement.
So how do these tiny little proteins actually make a muscle contract?
Well, the answer lies in one of the most fundamental concepts in all of exercise science. This is a big one. It's called the sliding filament theory. Okay, this is the absolute core of how a muscle works. So let's walk through it. First, the muscle is just chilling, at rest. Then, that nerve signal we've been following finally arrives, and bam, it causes a flood of calcium to be released. Now, this calcium is the key. It basically unlocks binding sites on the actin filament. This allows the myosin heads to reach up, grab on, and pull. That pull is the power stroke, and it's fueled by our body's energy currency, ATP. As long as calcium and ATP are around, the myosin head will recharge, let go, and grab on again a little further down the line, just ratcheting along. And then finally, when the nerve signal stops, the calcium gets pumped back into storage, the links are broken, and the muscle relaxes. That's it.
So now we know how muscles contract. But as you know, not all contractions feel the same, right? So now we're going to explore the different ways a muscle can act and the specialized fibers that are designed to perform those actions. Let's go right back to our bicep curl. When you lift that weight up towards your shoulder, your bicep gets shorter, right? That's a concentric action. But then, when you control the weight on the way back down, your muscle's actually lengthening while it's still under tension. That's an eccentric action. And by the way, that's where a lot of that post-workout muscle soreness comes from. So what if you just hold the weight still, say halfway through the curl? Well, that's an isometric action.
Your muscle is firing, it's generating force, but it's perfectly matched by the weight, so there's no actual movement. Think of a plank or a wall sit. That's all isometric.
Now, the muscle fibers that are doing all this work, they're not all the same. They're specialists. On one end of the spectrum, you've got your type 1 fibers, or slow twitch. Think of these as your marathon runners. They're super efficient and can go for a very long time without getting tired. On the total opposite end, you have your type 2X fibers. These are your Olympic sprinters. They generate a massive amount of force really, really fast, but they burn out in just a few seconds. And right there in the middle, you've got your type 2A fibers, which are kind of like the versatile all-around athletes. Now, your personal mix is largely genetic, but your training can absolutely help you maximize the potential of what you've got.
So we have all this amazing muscle contraction happening, but it would all be completely useless energy if there wasn't something to pull against. And that's where our skeleton comes in. It's the essential framework, the system of levers that actually turns a muscle's pull into real, meaningful movement. And here is a super simple but absolutely vital distinction you have to know. Tendons connect muscle to bone. They're the anchors. Ligaments connect bone to bone, and they provide stability for the joint. So just remember, muscle to bone bone. Simple as that.
Now, because our bones provide our entire structure, their health is absolutely critical. A really common condition, especially as we get older, is osteoporosis. It literally means porous bones, and it's just what it sounds like. It makes the bones weak, brittle, and dramatically increases the risk of fractures. And this right here, this brings us to one of the most powerful reasons why we train. Your bones are not just dead scaffolding. They are living, adapting tissue. When you do weight-bearing exercise, that mechanical stress sends a direct signal to your bone cells telling them, hey, we need to get stronger. In response, they adapt by getting denser and tougher. This means resistance training isn't just rebuilding muscle. It is one of the single best ways to fight off age-related bone loss. So let's bring it all home. It all starts with a single thought, a neural spark. That spark travels to the muscle, which kicks off a chemical reaction, causing tiny proteins to slide past each other. That microscopic contraction pulls on a tendon, which then pulls on a bone, our lever, and that lever creates movement. It's just an amazing, elegant, and perfectly integrated system.
So there you have it. You now have the fundamental blueprint for all human movement. You understand the why and the how behind every single exercise. So the only real question left is, how are you going to use this knowledge to build a stronger, more efficient, and more resilient machine?